Welcome, beautiful people, and thank you for joining us on Till the Wheels Fall Off, a podcast by Two Folk Couple. I'm Matt.
And I'm Paige.
And we're here to inspire others, to bring you guys into our lives and tell you a little bit about our journey. Over 20 years together, we've learned a few things.
We're going to work toward being the best version of yourself possible. We're going to dig into building a positive mindset, discuss mental health, addiction recovery, improving fitness, building businesses, and insight into what it takes to navigate life today.
Welcome back to another episode of Till the Wheels Fall Off. I am Matt.
I'm Paige.
Let's talk about something a little touchy today.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how to talk to your kids about an addicted loved one. How to talk to your kids about addiction in general. How do you go about this? Everyone's got a ton of questions about it. It is a very tricky subject, but we've got experience here, luckily.
Yes. But I typically don't like to discuss our parenting style because our kids are still young and we have no idea how it's going to work out.
That could totally backfire on us, right?
Right.
Talk about, oh, hey, we're awesome parents. Look how great we are. And then they end up robbing convenience stores or something.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's always a 50-50 chance that they're going to do something,
Yeah.
It just is what it is. But we're trying to prepare them the best that we can. And this is from professionals as well. So it's not like we just pulled it out of our ass.
Yeah, we didn't just come up with this and thought, hey, this will probably work.
Yeah.
Give that a shot.
Right.
No,
right.
This is tested. This has been worked through. This has been checked. So I think that you've got a much better grasp on this than me, though. You tend to be the more stable of the two of us, I would think. What, you don't agree with that?
Look at my face. Is that true?
I think it is.
Okay, well, at least you think that. Thanks.
You've been faking it all these years?
Fake it till you make it, baby.
Sheesh.
No, I have my moments, but I think we all do. But yes, okay, I think I am. When it comes to this, I was raised in a very open household when it came to communication, and we would talk about things. So I tried to spill that into my own children. Age appropriate, of course.
Yeah, I think you did a good job.
Thanks.
Honestly.
I mean, our kids are they're pretty open. Like when they have a problem, they'll come to us and we'll talk and we have good conversations. So I think that's a plus.
And I think that this information, not just talking about addiction, but in general, this is probably just good information for talking to your kids about any difficult subject.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Even mental health issues, anything that's going on at school, like bullying.
School drama.
Yes. Any type of toxicity going on in their life. I think that this is just how you communicate with your kids, basically, about having difficult conversations.
Man, and I think that we're about to have a really important conversation in general because things aren't the way they were when we were kids. There's so much more cyberbullying, mental health amongst teenagers and preteens is atrocious.
Oh, yeah. So
for the first time in recorded history, we are actually recording preteen suicides.
Yeah.
I think it's 2014 is when mental health experts started noticing a major decline in the mental health of teenagers and preteens, which coincides with the release of a really popular app called Instagram.
Yeah.
I don't think it's any coincidence at all.
Right.
Snapchat as well. Our kids have so many more avenues now to get exposed to things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The back of their IDs for school have suicide awareness information.
Are you serious?
Yes. And our son is in 4th grade and our daughter is in 6th grade.
Wow, I've never looked at the back of the ID.
Yes. Yeah, they came home and they showed that to me. And I was like, as much as it hurts to discuss this information, it is so important. My great aunt passed away from suicide a few years ago.
Yeah.
And it is something that is in our home, in our blood, like it is in our DNA. So we're very open about mental health and things like that with our children.
Yeah, we are. We actually attended a fundraiser a few weeks back. I think we mentioned it here, but it was for the Grant Halliburton Foundation, which it's a charity that raises money to provide resources for suicide prevention for teenagers and preteens. Yeah. They have these hope squads that they deploy into schools to have conversations about this stuff because a lot of times people are not trained to deal with this, especially in the bilingual communities, like Spanish-speaking communities. They do a really good job of outreach there. it's important. It's near and dear to our hearts. Mental health it's something we've both struggled with. We understand the importance of, and I think it's a conversation that needs to be going on in everyone's home these days.
Well, to be real, it starts with your kids. What their mental health, like, it starts with them and how they're going to become adults. So this kind of stuff is so important to discuss.
Yeah, start earlier than later.
Yeah.
And chances are, if you listen to our show, that you're no stranger to mental health battles.
Right. So let's kind of get into this. We're going to talk about how to talk to your kids if you have an active addicted partner, talk to your kids on if someone is going to treatment, and then just basically how to talk to your kids in general about uncomfortable topics.
I think that's solid.
So with us, like I said, our kids are 9 and 11. They're pretty young. We started talking to them, oh my gosh, when they were super young to actually understand. And it was when Matt would go to his treatment centers on every Monday or every other Monday, and they would wonder, where's dad going? Where's dad going? So Matt would just start saying, I'm going to the hospital to help others. So this was age appropriate for them to understand that he was going to help others. And we didn't get into the addiction yet because they didn't really understand what that meant.
No, they had no clue. They wouldn't even know how to comprehend that.
No. So as they got older, we finally, told them he goes to a treatment center where he went, when Sydney was 9 months old, and they understand that their dad was addicted to pills and liked alcohol too much. Now, they don't know the stories. They know some stories, I think, that you've opened up some stories to them.
I think they've heard things in passing and kids are sponges. They will soak that stuff up.
Yes.
And we'll get into that later, what's appropriate, what's not.
Right. So we're going to explain that there's a fine line. There's a boundary here.
Yeah, there is.
To where you can overshare or there's undersharing. So we're going to explain how to do the middle ground.
Yeah, and disclosure, our children, or I guess we only had one at the time, daughter was 9 months old when I got sober. But the conversation continues in the home today because recovery is a large part of our lives.
Yes.
And it's discussed often.
Yes.
When you're in recovery, like it doesn't exactly make up my entire identity, but it is a large part of it because when you're in recovery, you're committed to growth, you're committed to change for the better, you're committed to challenging yourself.
Personal
and so
development.
that theme kind of runs through everything.
Yes.
So it's discussed quite often.
Yeah. When you were in treatment, your counselor said to me, and I remember this to this day, she said that this is a blessing for your family. Recovery is a blessing for your family. And at first, I didn't understand that
So
because
what are you
I
talking
knew
about?
nothing about how addiction worked. I knew nothing about alcoholism. I didn't understand. I just thought, people drink too much and they were assholes. I didn't know. But when she said that, I was like, what do you mean? And now I know because our kids are benefiting so much from the personal development that we both choose to do every day.
Yeah, I've heard actually a licensed counselor say before that she would take a family that has worked through addiction over any other type of family as far as who she would put her money on for success in life.
Wow.
She said over everything, normal families, broken homes, you name it, it's the ones that get through this.
Yeah.
She said that once you learn how to do that, you can really face anything in the world.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. And she wasn't just saying that to like,
blow smoke up your ass.
no, she wasn't. Yeah,
Is that the term?
That's
I said that in a TikTok video yesterday, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting, Paige.
Just
You never
kinda
said
came
that
to you?
before." Yeah.
Isn't that weird how stuff just kind of, where'd that come from?
It's like I know
But
that
yeah.
I know that meant something. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, she was being very honest about it,
And-
sincere.
also with kids, like with addiction, it's genetic, right? Like, is it genetic?
There is-
is it
no,
not? They say that it's genetic.
There's a genetic component to it,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. That's what I was trying to get at, a genetic component.
Yeah, there's a genetic component to it. I think that a lot of times people will say, like genetics are by no means a guarantee, though.
Right.
Nature loads the gun and the environment pulls the trigger.
Exactly.
But
So
the gun is loaded.
Right. So that's why we try really hard to break those cycles by doing recovery.
Yes.
And we do tell our children that it is possible one day that they will struggle with drugs or alcohol. We tell them that. And it sounds like, oh, why are you telling your kids that? Aren't you supposed to protect them? No, I am protecting them by educating them on how this kind of thing can affect you as a person and those that are in relationships with you and your family. And it can keep going. Like, this needs to be discussed.
Yeah, getting the cart in front of the horse just a bit. But you just reminded me of something when you said that. a lot of people don't talk about this kind of stuff. A lot of people don't share the recovery journeys. I mean, AA in its very essence is intended to be anonymous. I mean, that's one of the core values of the program.
Mm-hmm.
Like anonymity is it's a core central concept in the program.
Yes.
Because it places principles before personalities.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I look at that, I think for me anyway, personally, there's so much more benefit to me sharing my story, and it's not self-promotion. It's not a way for me to say, look at me, look at me. It's a way that I can reach my hand out to anyone else that's struggling, that's scared to talk about it,
Yep.
so that they will know where to turn. And
Absolutely.
I think when it came to our family, that was especially important, that regardless of what happens and what decisions that they make, because you can't prevent your kids from making every bad decision.
Right.
You can give them guidance, but ultimately they have agency, and they have will and self-will, and they can do what they want. But God forbid it ever happens, they will know that there is a way out, that there's a solution, that there is hope if they choose it.
Right. And you can always ask for help.
Yeah, which is
that's the big thing. If they're struggling, we want them to be able to come to us for help, because they know that we struggled once.
yes, absolutely.
And that's important.
Yeah, there are solutions, and that you can be happy. You can live a fulfilling life without it.
Yeah.
Because when you're caught in it, it doesn't always feel that way.
Right.
And I hope that us sharing this journey from like your perspective, Paige, is that we can do the same thing for spouses as well.
Yeah.
Spouses and partners and loved ones of alcoholics and addicts, that there is a happily ever after for you as well.
Right. I have been very clear with our children, though, that we will not enable them if they're grown adults, like money-wise and stuff like that. Like, I love you. It doesn't mean I love you any less, but I'm going to let you know that I'm not going to enable your addiction.
Yeah, didn't the little one look at you the other day like, huh?
He did.
What do you mean?
He did. He asked me a question. He was like, I don't remember specifically what it was, but it was, we, like I said, we have very open discussions. We have the best car talks when we're going to extracurricular activities, because we live so far away, so it takes like 30 minutes to get anywhere. So we have really good conversations. But he asked something about like, will you kick me out of the house or something like that? And I was like, there's a 50% percent chance that I'm going to do that. I'm not going to enable you. I'll help you and I'll guide you, but I'm not going to enable your use. But I'll be there for you.
He was like dang.
I know he was. He was like, whoa. But it's something that they need to know, that this is serious.
Yeah.
Addiction is serious. Alcoholism is serious. It is a big deal.
It's deadly.
Yeah.
At its worst, it's deadly.
Yeah.
I don't know. Arguably, at its worst, it affects generations of people because of the trauma that's passed down.
Yeah.
But I've been to more funerals and services, memorials in the 10 years I've been sober than I have the previous 20 something odd years I was alive before that.
Yeah.
And it's just insane. This stuff kills people. It kills people every day.
Right. And the people that are around them, some of that kills us too, because we become super stressed and our mental illness just goes.
Changes people forever. And
it
then,
does.
And then that trauma gets passed down to your children
It
without
does.
you wanting it to or even realizing it.
Right.
It gets passed down all the same.
Right.
When you've been affected, you can't help it. It's almost like secondhand smoke. It's secondhand trauma that's passed down.
Exactly. Okay. Let's get into this. So what if your partner is in active addiction? How do you communicate that?
You tell me.
You can't
Because I was
answer
the
that?
active addict.
Okay. So I guess I'll keep it pretty simple for now, with honesty. But this is not saying everything that you feel about your partner, right? It's just being honest and very direct and to the point and about how they're feeling. So let's say that you have a partner who slurs and may not be very present, and your kid is asking questions. Mommy, why is daddy acting like that? If they're young, you can say something along the lines of, daddy is sick. He drinks stuff that makes him act like that. How does it make you feel when he acts like that? This is putting it into their hands and letting them talk. You're opening up a conversation and letting them know that you're listening to them. Because if you're shoving it under the rug, it's only going to invalidate their feelings. So if you deflect
or just make something
make something up, or which sometimes this happens, you can say, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. If they try to ask you a question that's like
a follow-up to that.
Right. That's like, I don't really know how to answer that. And that's okay. But make sure you let them know that they are not at fault. That is one of the biggest things that you have to do whenever you're talking to your children. Let them know that it is not their fault, that they have a mommy or daddy that is sick.
Yeah. Do you want to get into the disease model?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we've had discussions on this show about the disease model. I think that if you've heard our perspectives on it, you sort of know where we stand when it comes to how the disease model is often used to invalidate the experiences of spouses, because it's used as the overarching, like, I don't know, equalizer in so many ways that sort of tells people, you can forget about all that stuff. Don't take it personally because it's just a disease. Don't worry about that abuse. Don't worry about that trauma. That doesn't count because this person has a disease. I think that I don't want people to think that we're not advocates of it in some ways as well, because I think this is where it fits perfectly.
Yeah.
When it comes to how you discuss this with a child.
Right, because your children don't choose their parents.
They don't. No, they don't. Like, these children are in this home.
Yeah. They
They have no choice. We brought them into this world. We've exposed them to these things. I think when you're married to someone or you're in a relationship with someone, not to say that it's any easier, but in so many ways, you have a choice of whether or not you want to stay in that situation, where a child does not.
Yeah.
They don't. They don't have a choice. If they're in that home, they're in it with you too. They're being exposed to all the same things.
Yes.
And so Dr. William Silkworth was one of the first physicians that really identified alcoholism as something other than a moral failing.
Okay.
He wrote something called the Doctor's Opinion, and it's sort of like the preface in the Alcoholics Anonymous book. Silkworth he calls it an allergy, which I always thought was a really, really great way of looking at it.
Yeah.
An allergy. Kids understand what allergies are. Many kids have allergies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like every other kid's got a nut allergy these days.
Right,
So
right.
kids are familiar.
Yeah.
Like, they understand
Gluten.
what an allergy is. Like, that concept hits home to them.
Mm-hmm.
I think the allergy concept's a great way to describe to children what's happening.
Yeah.
To say that daddy or mommy is allergic to alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to, if they're quick enough, they're going to ask, well, then why would you? Why am I not allowed to have peanut butter sandwiches? And he's over there drinking 12-pack.
Right.
But you can just tell them, you can sort of open that door to addiction about sometimes the substance takes the person and they don't want to even do it, but they are allergic to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what addiction is.
Yeah.
So, but an easy way to open that door is through the concept of the allergy. I think that's a great way to look at it. I think it's a very age-appropriate way to discuss it as well.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
Yeah. Thank Dr. William Silkworth.
Yeah, and this is where there's Alakid, which I didn't know, and I looked it up. I don't know if it's widespread, but it's like Al-Anon, but it's for kids ages 6 to 12. And then there's Alateen for kids 12 to 19. And I highly, highly suggest looking into that if you have children, because it will help them have a community to talk to when they're going through something or ask questions, and they're learning about addiction.
Yeah. Yeah. I also did not know Alakid was a thing. I think that's amazing though.
Yeah.
I'll
link it.
I've heard wonderful things about Alateen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can only imagine at that age, and it's like what, 12 to 20 or so, like even young adults.
12 to 9, what? For what?
For Alateen. Yeah, 12 to 19. But I'm sure that if you're 21, you can still attend.
I mean, you go to Al-Anon at that point because you are an adult.
But I think it's really important for kids to understand that they're not responsible for these things.
That's the number one goal.
You're not responsible for it.
No.
You can't cure it. You don't need to take on these emotions or this burden of fixing this person. Oftentimes, children will do that.
Mm-hmm.
As a family unit, a lot of times you'll have at least one of your kids, if you've got multiple, that feels the responsibility to be the hero.
Right.
And it's very, very important that they understand that it's not their job to do that.
Yes.
And you got to be really careful about not making it their job and exposing them to enough information so they feel like it's their job.
Right.
Because as a parent, the more you share with your child, the more they're going to feel responsible for it.
Yes. And that's where the line is.
That's where the line is.
There is age-appropriate information that you share with your children. And that's where I say you make it about them and how they're feeling, and not necessarily talk to them about how it's affecting you.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, if you want to talk to somebody about how it's affecting you, go to therapy, find a community, a support group, talk to people, talk to your friends, not your children when it comes to how it's making you feel.
Yeah. And we'll cap this episode off with the really in-depth discussion about the parentification of children and emotional incest and things like that.
I mean, you can say something along the lines of like, yes, I get sad sometimes, things like that, because that's real.
Sure.
But it's not word vomiting on your children. But like you said, we'll talk about that in a little bit later.
But I think you opened it up perfectly when you said honesty is the best policy.
Yes.
So that you're not invalidating what they obviously see and understand to be weird or wrong, or something just doesn't feel right to them. Letting them know that, okay, yes, that is correct. Just explaining it in a way that's age appropriate.
Yes.
And I think that age appropriate, I think, you know, what's funny is that I think about, you ever seen yearbooks from like the 70s or 80s and how everyone looked like they were 40 years old? I think kids these days look younger, but in so many other ways, I think they seem more mature because they're exposed to more adult information through social media and whatnot, but they are still children.
Yeah, their brains are still not fully developed.
Just because your kids can ask the question doesn't mean they're ready to hear the answers.
Right.
So be very aware of that if a 12-year-old seems wise beyond their years, they're still 12.
Right. And even if you feel like you're not ready to explain, you know, certain things, you can say, I'm going to explain this in detail a little bit later when you're, you know, old enough to understand exactly what we're dealing with. That's appropriate as well. But also talk to them about how they're feeling. So
yeah. And as a parent,
it's not invalidating them.
As a parent, like, remember that no one, I mean, I think we took a pre-parenting class where like we learned how to swaddle and change diapers on like little dummy dolls. Remember that?
Yeah.
But we are not given instruction manuals on how to be creative about how to describe this sort of stuff. It is okay that you don't understand it or that you're not great at it, but there are avenues like what you're doing right now about listening to this conversation. There are also therapists. There are licensed chemical dependency counselors that have experience with this.
Yes.
You can get the information if you're not ready to have the conversation right now. If you've got this going on, I would start to prepare yourself for when the day comes that you have to discuss this.
Yeah.
Like, and don't beat yourself up for not knowing how.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's a process.
We are
sure.
all living life for the first time.
Yeah.
No one is necessarily prepared for everything.
Yeah.
And this is something that none of us are really taught.
Yeah.
I know we came from a generation where a lot of the stuff wasn't discussed because we were coming off the backs of like boomers and their families where nothing was discussed.
Yeah.
You're sad. Keep that crap to yourself. I don't want to hear about that. We don't discuss those things.
Or, you're weak, or suck it up, or you're sensitive.
Right. So we're not too far removed from that.
Yeah.
We're not, but things are changing. Things are obviously changing. We have to learn how to do these things. And that's exactly what you're doing now. And I applaud you all for it. I applaud you for it.
And I found a list of books. There's like 12 books for different age gaps on how you can speak to your kids. We haven't read any of them, but I looked through them and they all seemed really, really, well put together. And some of them are by licensed therapists, and I'm going to link it in the show notes.
We should probably grab one.
Yeah, I'm going to, because I read like the
for
backs
our
of
age
some.
groups for theirs. Yeah.
Yes, and it's helpful for those who don't know how to navigate this. I mean, it's just sometimes you got to get a book and say, because metaphors are really good with kids.
Metaphors are huge. And that's what I
Amazing.
meant about how to be creative about how to describe these things.
Yes.
Things like the allergy concept
Right.
is really good. You have to dumb it down in a way that a child can understand it.
Yes.
You can't give them an adult metaphor. Like, I have this problem a lot when I'm talking. So I coach little kids baseball. And after the game, I'll be talking to them and I'll realize that I'm talking to them like I'm talking to a conference room of 40-year-old men.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're looking at me and I can tell, like, I just screwed it all up. They don't understand a word I just said. I can't say you guys were incredibly resilient tonight. They're going to look at me like, what? I have to say things like, you guys were super brave.
Yeah.
Oh, I get that.
Yeah.
So you have to be creative about the way that you describe this. And metaphors are huge. So when it comes to like, why does daddy fall asleep at noon? You can say daddy's incredibly tired because of his allergies. That a 5 or 6-year-old can understand.
Yes. I don't know. Kind of hesitant about that.
About a 5 or 6-year-old not understanding that?
No, I guess I get just when you said by his allergies, your child might think, oh, I've got allergies, so I'm going to be tired.
When they're 5 or 6.
I guess when they're 5 or 6, that totally makes sense.
They can't understand
the
depth of what dad is really dealing with.
Right. When they get a little bit older, you can bump it up a notch.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then there will be more things that they have experienced in life at that point that you can tie it back to. Yeah.
And they're going to recognize things. Kids know things. They see things that you don't realize that they're seeing.
Yeah.
So,
kids start to understand what disappointment and rejection is like when they're probably later elementary school. Maybe when they don't get invited to someone's birthday party, or maybe when they aren't included in the soccer game at recess. Like
Yeah.
they start to understand what feeling left out is like and what rejection feels like.
Mm-hmm.
And you can start to have metaphors like that.
Yeah.
You know how the game was full and they didn't ask you to play, but no one really meant to hurt you. That's kind of what's going on whenever dad's not asking you about how you're feeling, about how he doesn't show up to your games. It's not that he doesn't love you. He's struggling badly right now.
That's good.
And so you have to put things in age appropriate ways so they can understand. Think about what your child is dealing with in their life that is real to them, that they can understand. Find a metaphor, a creative way to put it into words that relates back to something that they experience. And they can go, oh, aha. And the older they get, you can include more and more of this until they really understand the big picture and they can see it for themselves.
Yeah. And validate your children.
Validate your children,
to
please.
Build up their self-esteem. And when they have a higher self-esteem, they'll be able to make better choices when they become adults or even during childhood. So please validate them, not give them solutions to everything or tell them they're wrong or say you shouldn't feel that way or suck it up. That's going to just make their self-esteem go down further. Just validating them and listening to them is the best you can do for your kids.
It is.
That goes for so many different topics, not just the addiction topic. Time.
Man, we'll start an episode about one thing and like ends up being about something totally different because I screwed up. And
No,
just
you don't
went
screw
off
it up.
the
It always
rails.
goes together. It always goes together. It doesn't really derail. But now I completely forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, why did I do that?
Now
I'm the
you
worst about
did
that.
Derail.
You'll think of it here in a second and then just derail us again.
Dang, it was decent too.
It was about how we were talking about how parents can mean well but still screw up and how we're all just trying. They'll come with instruction manuals. It'll come back to it.
Oh, I did
There we
it.
go. There it is.
Okay, so I think that this is our kids started doing that. So I think this is why people aren't really having kids these days too.
You think that's part of it?
Not necessarily that they can't find the partner, but I think that having kids these days is really hard. I was talking to my mom about it one time. She's like, I don't know how y'all parent these days. It's a totally different ball game than it was when she was a parent. Because we have access to so much and the world is like darker, or we're just more, we see more things, we see more negativity than they did back in the day because they were just all in their little circle. Now we have social media, we have everything. And I think that this is making it difficult for people to have kids because they're like, I don't want to raise kids in a world like this.
I think that sociologists would absolutely agree with you on that point too. There are a ton of reasons that people aren't having kids. And I was actually reading, I think by the year 2100, the United States is going to experience its first population decrease in its history.
Right.
It will peak at 2080, but by 2100, it will begin to decrease. People are having less children.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, just an economic standpoint, that is detrimental to a society.
Yes.
Because government's really just a Ponzi scheme.
Right.
It only works as long as everyone's paying in. More people pay in, but when there's less people to pay in and we have all these benefits, it gets bad quickly.
Yeah. But like with how mental health is so important right now, and there's not enough therapists to go around, and
Yeah.
people are really, really struggling. I mean, they're probably scared to bring kids into that because it just adds another layer.
Can we add a counseling for the future spot right here?
Yeah.
Okay. I've been meaning to do this. We talk about this a lot more. So Paige and I are part of a foundation called the Counseling for the Futures Foundation. And she just mentioned that there are not enough therapists to go around. That is absolutely true. There are not enough therapists to go around. If you want to go see a therapist in many places, you might be on a wait list.
Yeah.
But you're in crisis. You need somebody. I know that we were in this place at one time, whenever you needed help the most. And you were in absolute crisis to the point where you wouldn't even pick up the phone to start calling people. I got on the phone and I started calling around for therapists and counselors and psychiatrists and psychologists. And I was just going through just like Google phone book, like calling people over and over and over. And I was told no new patients. I was told, or I would just get a voicemail, sometimes not even a voicemail. The phone would just ring until someone finally answers. And then they'll tell you it's a 3 or 4 week wait. It's like, we're in trouble. I need someone.
Yeah.
There aren't enough to go around. And part of the reason for that is that when you look at the economic decision of being a therapist, oftentimes these are incredibly empathetic people that want to help, but we all have normal problems. Like we have cell phone bills and car payments and water bills and electricity bills. And when you have just spent upwards of $100,000 on a graduate level program, I'm just thinking like the entire cost of your education, but graduate level programs, which can be 40 or 50 grand, you get out with student loans, and the economics of being a therapist, it is not the most high paying profession in the world.
Yeah.
Oftentimes the ones that need to be the most high paying are not, like teachers, therapists, things like that.
Right.
They're just not, which is unfortunate. So the Counseling for the Futures Foundation is raising money to put therapists through their graduate level programs completely debt free.
So
Right now, every single dollar that you donate goes straight to tuition, books, living expenses, you name it. So I'm part of the board. We take absolutely nothing off the top. We have very few fees. We pay for a website. We can disclose all this stuff, a website, some processing fees, things like that. But that's it.
Yeah.
Everything else goes to people. So if you can find out more at counselingfutures.org.
Yeah, we'll put it in the notes.
Yeah, you can make it. It's actually always in our notes.
Oh.
It's always in the show notes.
That's good to know.
All the time.
You do that editing. I do the YouTube.
Yeah, all the time. It's always in the show notes. So please check it out, counselingfutures.org. If you can only give $1, it means something. It is, the holiday season. A lot of people are thinking about what they're going to do as far as their charitable donations go this year. I would love for you to consider the Counseling for the Futures Foundation because it is a legitimate cause that we believe in, we are part of, we fight for.
Yep.
And it's vital to our growth as a society, as healthy people, and our children as well.
You did that so good on the fly.
I think about this all the time.
It's
this
so
is always
awesome.
going on in my head.
It was like, it went perfectly. This was not part of our outline.
No, it wasn't.
I
I need to plug this real quick.
I
'cause
love
it's
it.
You just mentioned the fact there's not enough therapists, and I was like, bingo.
Bingo. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So actually, I credit you for that. Where were we on this episode?
Okay. Now, so let's get back to it. I wanted to ask you, what if the partner who is struggling asks you not to tell your kids about their disease?
Asked
They're
you
drinking.
not to tell your kids about the disease.
Yes. What if they tell you, let's say that you're in active addiction and you tell me, I don't want you to tell the kids that I drink too much, or I don't want you to talk to them about why I am the way I am.
It's my opinion that that's not a good idea.
Right.
I'm not a licensed professional.
Can you elaborate on
I'm just
this?
going to say, this is just, you're asking me what my opinion is. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea to keep secrets from your kids. I don't think it's a good idea to have them make their own assumptions because they will.
Yep.
They're not just going to drop it. They're going to start to put their own narrative together.
Yes.
And oftentimes it's going to reflect back on them and they're going to think it's something that I am doing.
Yeah.
I am not enough.
Right.
I need to try harder. I'm not getting the attention I desire or what I need. This must somehow be my fault.
Yeah.
I think you're setting yourself up for a narrative in the home that creates dishonesty or sweeping things under the rug, or we just don't talk about problems.
Right.
And I think it just, without realizing, without outright saying it, this is what lays the foundation for families that don't talk about serious problems. Oh. And when they're struggling, they're not going to be comfortable talking about this stuff because we don't talk about these things.
Right.
It's never discussed. Right. You don't have to explicitly tell your kids, we don't talk about that. You just don't talk about them and they get the point.
Yeah.
So I think that you're setting yourself up for a rough future when it comes to their own issues.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts.
Yeah. And don't you think it's a form of enabling your partner whenever you do try to keep it a
can
secret?
be. It can be. And like, I've thought about this a lot. Like in telling my story publicly and being upfront about it on social media and going to treatment centers and speaking and, speaking to executive groups and all the things that we do, podcasts, every bit of it. My recovery is very public.
Yeah.
And
it always has been. Like you, from day one, you were very open about it.
And like there have been celebrities that are well documented in being sober. And like when you come out and say that I'm sober, you sort of have like an extra set of eyeballs of accountability on you.
True.
In so many ways where suddenly like people that I don't even know look at me as an inspiration. People will look at me as like, if that guy can figure it out, I can figure it out. And it's kind of tough because I'm not special. I'm just a person. I'm a normal person. I get up in the morning, my hair looks like crap and my breath smells, and like I am a human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just a normal person. But when you come out and you say that and you're public like we are, it sort of adds an extra layer of accountability to you.
Yeah.
So in not saying something, it's almost, I wouldn't say, because there are many people who keep it anonymous, and I respect that decision completely.
Absolutely.
But when it comes to those closest to you, I think that it can be a form of enabling, because if my kids don't know I have a problem, then I don't have to worry about their opinions. I don't have to worry about what they think about what I do. And I can just get away with it. It's easier for me to get away with it when no one knows.
Right.
So I think that there are pros and cons to both.
Yes.
About not saying anything and saying something. I think there are less cons to being open and honest about it. Because whether or not I like it, this keeps me accountable in some way. Yeah. Even this podcast keeps me accountable in some way.
Yeah.
It does. Facts. It does, really.
I know, I agree.
It's not just about me anymore.
No.
Like my recovery, in the beginning, it's just about me. I got to stay sober. I got to stay sober. Now that, we have tons of people that follow us and people that I work with in the program, all the eyeballs that have seen us, like there are millions of people that know I'm sober now, and they know that that's a thing. Like, okay, so there is some added bit of accountability to not just myself today or my family today. There's an accountability to all those people that would look up and say, that guy figured it out, and they keep me in their mind.
Yeah.
And it feels so cringy to say that, because maybe no one thinks about me. That's fine. But the fact that people could still keeps you accountable in some way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for
so
sure.
I think that, so to your question, is it a form of enabling? Sort of. Yeah, I think it is.
Right.
I think it could absolutely be.
Yeah.
I think that unless you have a damn good reason to be completely anonymous about it, there are some people who are public figures. There are some people who are doctors, physicians, things like that, where this stuff is not tolerated. Judges, attorneys, there are tons of professions where this could be really detrimental to your career and your financial safety of your family.
Right, right.
But if you just don't like it because it's more convenient for you to get away with crap, you don't really have a good reason to keep it anonymous, do you?
Right.
Just being honest about it.
Yeah.
Do you really have a good reason? Do you just not want to talk about it? That's a habit that you need to break anyway. We need to get more honest about life in general.
Agreed.
Let's start here.
Yeah.
That's my personal perspective and opinion on it. And
Right.
I encourage anyone I've ever talked to and worked with, I encourage them to be honest and upfront about this with their family, with their friends, with their children, with their spouses, everyone around them, because of that added layer of accountability. Because we need to like, when we started this podcast, like our logo is a skull, not because we're just weird, like Tim Burton fans. It's about living a maskless, authentic life.
Yep.
This is what we all look like underneath the surface. And I think that that's sort of the first step to doing it, saying, this is who I am.
Yeah.
This is who I am.
Yeah.
This is me. I have no mask to wear. I'm not hiding behind anything. This is who I am.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really good thing to do. But I have worked with people in the past who did have certain professions or reasons that were absolutely valid. Like, let's keep this to our closest friends and family. And not everyone needs to know about this.
Right.
But with your children, I can't think of a reason, unless it's extremely a public figure of some kind, like the president's kids. Maybe not need to know, because who knows what they're going to go home or go to school and tell their friends, right?
Right.
You can't tell a 6-year-old to keep that kind of a secret and expect it to be kept.
Right.
So, yeah, there are obviously, it's not a black or white solution, but in general, I think for most people, yeah, they should know.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, so like our kids, like they know about the podcast. They know what we discuss. They know who we help. They know that we have a TikTok and social media. They do not follow us on TikTok, though. That is not an okay thing. I said that there are boundaries. They don't really listen to our podcast either.
Yeah, and we never use names or anything like that around them.
No. I mean,
Ever.
I'm just talking about like what we discuss in depth. They're not old enough to acknowledge the stuff that we talk about. Like they don't understand what we talk about on each podcast.
Yeah, I think they think it's really cool that we have a YouTube channel because to kids,
Yes, but I was going to
like
say
the coolest thing ever.
that they do tell their friends what our podcast is about, though.
They do, and that's what I was about to bring up. Is they don't really know how to describe it though.
They do a little bit. MJ has told me some conversations he's had
Has
with
he really?
people. Yeah, and it's always opened up a conversation with his friends on a deeper level. And I think that's
interesting.
I think that's really cool because they're able to actually talk about things that a lot of kids don't talk about, and it's their mental health, and it's things that's going on in their house and how they're feeling. And it might feel weird. It did feel weird at first when our kids were telling their friends about what we're doing, because I'm like, ooh, yeah, I don't know if you're going to be allowed at their house ever again. But
I mean, how would it be that much different though than similar types of professions or people that have been around forever? Doctors help some really, really sick people.
yeah,
Pastors, deacons, preachers, they work with families through some really difficult things.
yeah, but the difference
It's been
is
around
that,
forever.
But the difference is that we've been through it. We're
Oh,
not
okay,
the
right.
professionals, like we don't have the license to discuss
We
it.
didn't read books about it to discuss it.
No,
we went to the school of hard knocks to discuss it.
Yeah, exactly. So that does make a difference.
It does, yeah.
It does. But then again, those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. So
Yes.
if your children's friends are gonna judge you for it, then that's on them.
I don't want that kid over here anyway then.
No. But it's been
Stay out in the road.
good. It's been okay for our kids so far, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, they're obviously they pick and choose who they talk about it with because they are at an age where they're like, I don't know if I should talk about this or not, but they're still open. So,
Yeah.
all right. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is like, what if your partner is going to treatment? How do you talk to your kids about that? And they're going to be away for 30 days or more.
What if, okay, Art, I was going to ask you, would you tell Sydney, but she would have been like staring at you with slobber coming out of her
9 months
lip.
old.
Yeah.
She's just like, oh, I get to go to grandma's house for a month with my mama.
I think that the term hospital is a great way of looking at it. Because this person is sick. Let's be honest. They are sick. They're going to a hospital to get better.
Yeah.
And that's a really simple way to explain it to young children.
Yeah. And it's okay. When you share that, you say it's okay to ask for help when you're hurting. They're going to go get help that they need so that they can work on being the best mom or dad that they can be.
And if you've got kids a little older, let's say you've got kids like preteen or even teenagers, you can be a little more honest with them about it.
Absolutely.
You can say that he's going to go get, or she's going to go get treatment for an addiction, for a problem that they're having. They're in a really good place to do this. It's a good thing. This is a good thing.
Yes.
This is a healthy thing.
They're not a
This
bad
is not a
person. They're a
shame
sick
thing.
person.
And you can let them know, like, you don't have to share this with everybody. This
Right.
is just for us to know as a family.
Yeah.
And I want to know how you feel about it.
Yep.
More than if you present it that way and let people know that it's just a good thing that someone's getting help.
Yes.
They're going to be receptive about it and feel like, okay, like that's a good thing. Yeah, that's great. They're not going to feel shame is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Oftentimes that's what we fear is that we're giving them shame. We're letting them feel bad about their family. I've said this a million times. There is no shame in addiction. There is no shame in it. Shame is this is who I am. This doesn't define me.
Right.
You can beat this thing. That's not shame. What's shameful about that?
Yeah.
You can feel badly for the things you've done. That's guilt. That's different. There's no shame allowed in addiction. There's no shame allowed in recovery or trying to get better.
Yes.
Even if it's your 5th time in treatment, keep trying. Right. Keep going.
Right.
Keep getting after it.
Right.
Keep trying to get better.
Right.
Do it. I think the only shame at all you could ever feel is if you never decided to do anything about it and just said, oh, well, who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can feel some shame there. You deserve to. That's terrible.
Yeah.
But someone who's trying, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's pick them up. Let's get behind them. Let's support them.
Yeah. And if they have a family program, get involved with that. Again, go to therapy, go to Alateen. Your kids do need to be educated on what's going on in their household.
Yeah. And let's just say I talked about pros and cons of like, do you tell your kids or not? Not just for the partner's perspective, like I think that can be enabling, but let's talk about some of the effects that addiction just has on children in general.
Okay.
It can affect kids tremendously.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it can have a major effect whether or not you realize it. being in that environment and everything that comes with it, all the characteristics of an addict or
instability is one of the biggest things.
Absolutely.
That causes like the kids need structure.
Kids will feel anxiety and fear. They will feel guilt and shame secondhand. They will act out oftentimes because they're not getting attention. They're not being raised because everyone is so focused on this addict or this toxic relationship that has you so preoccupied as you're just trying to survive every day.
Yeah.
They're not going to get the attention they need. They will begin to act out in school. They will withdraw. They will have trouble with their friends. Sometimes their basic needs are neglected. Sometimes they don't get a lunch because no one packed it. Sometimes there's no one there to give them lunch money. This happens to kids all the time.
Yeah.
They're just completely pushed to the side. Increase in mental health issues. That is a statistic that has been shown. PTSD, tendency to have their own addictions, getting caught up in crowds they don't need to be in because no one's watching them, no one's asking them anything. This affects children tremendously. It's important that these conversations are happening. And there are also financial impacts. Addiction, I mean, when there's an addiction in a family, it's very rare the family is doing well financially and it's not noticeable. It's a strain on finances. And that, in turn, kids feel that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that any of us at any point who didn't grow up in a silver spoon home knew when the family was struggling financially, didn't we?
Yeah.
Parents would ask you to hide bills, or maybe you would. I remember journaling as a little kid, talking about. I remember hearing my parents fight about money and just feeling so terrible and like crying and writing that my family was broke and I didn't even know how to feel.
Yeah.
It was scary to me. Yeah. That's happening to your children.
Yeah.
And you're not going to see their faces. You're not going to. They hear everything, okay? They hear everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yep.
I don't care how quiet you think you're talking. They hear it. They know something's up. So I think that an open discussion about this and put a larger focus on them than you think you even need to about how they feel.
Yeah.
Get them into therapy. Get them into some sort of program where they're able to talk about this, like Alateen or Alakid. And if you're in some sort of program as well, whether it be with us or anything else, it's going to help.
Yeah.
It's going to help that conversation flow.
Yep. All right. So let's kind of close this up on a last topic.
This is a fun one.
Yeah.
Ain't it?
Yeah. This is, yeah.
In the beginning, you mentioned that there's a line.
Yeah.
There's two extremes in this.
Yeah.
There's undersharing, which is saying nothing. We just talked about the
putting stuff under the
cons
rug.
of that, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
There's also oversharing.
Yes.
Which can be just as bad, if not worse.
Right.
So there are these two concepts, parentification and emotional incest. Parentification of a child is when children have to take on adult roles and responsibilities caring for their parent, when we put them in a place where we treat them like a contemporary, as someone our age, as a friend. And this can be very dangerous, especially with teenage children. Because like I said, they may act and sound and do certain things that seem very adult-like, but their brains are not there yet. They do not have the life experience to know how to handle this, to separate mom from woman in distress. Yeah. Or dad from man in distress. So when you have kids that are of that certain age, and I'm sure it happens with younger kids too, but especially with teenagers, when you're going through this, when you're going through all this stuff that we discuss here every single week, the gaslighting, the lying, the manipulation,
and you're struggling,
the infidelity, the financial infidelity, all this stuff that happens in these relationships, it is going to tear you apart at your core. Yeah. And you are going to want to talk about it. You're going to want to share this stuff. You're going to want to vent. You're not even going to be able to help it sometimes. It's just going to come out because it's so at the front of your mind all the time as it consumes your life. Be very aware of your children, your adult children, even your teenage children, because you can put them in a position where the more you share with them, you suddenly start talking to them without even realizing it, like they are one of your friends, as you're just venting or ranting about everything that their father is up to, about the drugs that he does, about where he gets them, about where he sleeps at night, about who he sees, about who he cheats on you with, all these details that are absolutely unnecessary and detrimental to them. Because now what you have done to them is you've made them feel responsible for your well-being. Yep. You have brought them into this world of your problems. Part of being a parent at times is protecting your children from this sort of thing until they're ready to hear it. If they're too young for it, it will F them up like you would not believe. Yep. I've seen this happen. It is horrible.
Yeah.
It is horrible.
Yeah.
Your relationship with your children will never be the same.
Right.
Ever. Mm-hmm. There are some things that it's okay to cry. It's okay to be hurt.
Yes.
It's okay to tell
say,
them,
I'm sad.
I'm struggling right now.
I'm struggling and this is hurting me too. But that's it. You don't go into detail as to why it is really affecting you.
You need to maintain age-appropriate boundaries with your children. That's
even
what's
adult
tough.
children.
Yes.
Even adult children. Like, you cannot word vomit on them. If you have done this and you're listening to this and you feel, oh shit.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's okay. But I do encourage you to take accountability.
Have that conversation.
Have that conversation.
How would you have that conversation?
With your adult child. If my adult child, if I
if
had
you
done
had
this,
done this, yeah.
I would ask them how it felt whenever I was expressing myself and oversharing.
And don't be shocked when your kids say, I don't know.
Right. But this is like
that's how it feels. You don't know how to feel.
Right. Or you don't know how to respond
have the
to
words.
it. But I mean, as an adult, you can.
And for adult
that's
children.
What I'm saying.
Okay,
adult children. This is for adult. If you're an older.
I have teenagers in my mind for some reason.
I know. No, I'm talking about adult children.
Okay.
If you feel like you've done this, even I guess teenagers, you can have the same conversation and say, I will no longer share this information with you if you're not comfortable with it, because you are putting a burden on them, and that's not okay. Like, they are still your kids, even as adults. You can just say, I'm sorry. I will do better. Own it. And they will respect that. If you don't own it and you continue to do it, you will be pushing your children further away.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some things that you can never you can't just unlearn
Right.
about your parents.
Right.
And we will all screw up at some point and make that mistake.
Yes.
But in these types of relationships, it's more, I would say, probable to happen on a regular basis, because the drama of these types of relationships, it's ongoing. It's happens so much, which, let's just be honest, let's peel back the curtain here. This is why what we discuss about becoming empowered and making decisions that are best for you is so important, because it's not just you that's being affected by this. In proxy, by you being affected, your children are also affected. The longer that you stay in this type of toxic behavior relationship, the more likely that there will be generational problems because of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So get educated, get empowered,
Yeah.
walk your recovery journey with us.
Yeah, and the way that we talk with our kids, like, they're learning boundaries, y'all. Like, our 11-year-old understands boundaries, and she knows what she will tolerate and what she won't tolerate.
She's so awesome.
And I love that. I'm like, you go, girl. Like, I'm so proud of you for knowing what you stand for. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And she knows when to walk away from someone who's harming her.
She's like...
Don't we all want that?
She's like legendary when it comes to that at her age. Like, she's so good at that.
Yeah.
I feel bad for her first boyfriends, honestly. These poor dudes aren't going to know what hit them.
Well, I'm hoping that she knows, like, she is going to be very picky. She's going to be very picky.
Girl got standards. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, she does. And I love it. It makes my heart so happy. She's so different than how I was. When I was a child, I'm going to be real here. I loved boy attention. I loved male attention. I wanted boyfriends all the time. I did. I had boyfriends from kindergarten all the way up.
Kindergarten?
Oh, yeah.
Golly,
yeah.
man.
Yeah.
I couldn't get a girl to look at me
My
until I was like
kindergarten-
13.
Yeah, my kindergarten boyfriend's name was Jake. Yeah.
And then I suckered you in.
And I had
14.
Valentine's. I had all of this stuff, but this was not healthy. This was not healthy. And I didn't realize that until I was older. It's like, okay, I needed that male attention and I craved it. And I always wanted a boyfriend. Our daughter is not like that. She just she doesn't even know how to talk to boys. She tells us all the time, I don't know how to talk to boys.
She asked me, what do you say to them? I'm like,
I'm like, what do you
honey,
mean?
they're so stupid at your age, 11, 12 years old. You could talk about fart jokes with them, honestly, and they'd probably be happy.
Right.
They don't know what to do with girls either.
But I grew up with all brothers, and it was boys all the time, so I knew how to talk to guys, and I try to help her, but she's like not hearing it. But it's okay. She's doing it right. She's doing it properly. I'm very proud of her.
I am proud of her
And
too.
I do think that is happening because we are open about what are you going to tolerate in toxic relationships. Like, you don't need to have toxicity around you. It's okay. Even though society tells you need to be involved in this person's life no matter what. I mean, no. If somebody's harming you, it's okay to put your boundaries up.
Let's cap it off with a discussion about emotional incest, which is a term that just makes me uncomfortable, but
I know.
by definition, it is, I mean, what it is. Covert, it's also known as covert or emotional boundary crossing, but it occurs when a parent relies on a child for emotional support and intimacy that should be reserved for adult relationships.
Yes.
You
basically treat your child like your husband.
This oftentimes happens in families that consider themselves very close. Having a close family is not a bad thing, but there have to be boundaries around adult relationships versus child relationships. These big close families pride themselves on discussing everything. Hold on, pump the brakes for just a moment, because not everything needs to be shared with your children. Not everything. I think this happens a lot with mothers and daughters, especially.
Oh, yeah.
You guys get super close, like girlfriends in some way.
Right.
But your job as a parent is really to model healthy adult behaviors, especially when in those early years. Like when you get older, you can talk about whatever you want, right? But during these informative years, during these developmental years, it's really important to keep these boundaries in place. So relying on your children emotionally can be incredibly hurtful and harmful for them.
Oh, yeah.
These are undeveloped minds that don't have the life experience that you have. And remember, when you're calling your teenage child, to vent about your spouse and what they've been doing, they don't even know how to take this, but they're going to sit there and listen to you because you're their mom.
Yeah.
You're their mother. They're going to listen to it, and they're going to hear all these things. I think oftentimes parents want to be heard and they want to be validated, and they turn to those that are closest to them. Of course they would. But if it's your child, you have to stop yourself and think about the harm that does for them. Yeah. Emotional incest is real, and it deeply affects children later on in life.
It does.
Deeply. And it will affect your relationship with them later on in life too.
Yes.
Especially when things don't go well, it can cripple it.
Yeah.
You've exposed them to some things that they had no business being exposed to. And I know that you meant well, but it's not good. So a good way to prevent that is I think our mouse is somewhere and something is happening because stuff is moving all over the screen right now. But anyway, I think that it's tough though when your family is your closest group of people, but you have to cultivate adult relationships, whether that be with a therapist, an online community, an actual in-person community, but you have to find people your age that you can share these things with. Yeah. Your children are not the place to dump all of your emotional baggage. No. They are not.
No.
That is
it's very inappropriate. Yeah.
Very inappropriate, rough. And be mindful of not just the things you outright say, but the emotional language that you use, your body language and things like that. You just have to be really careful about it. There's sometimes you have to bite your tongue when you want to be authentic and say, this sucks, I'm hurt, I'm mad, F him, F them, whoever it might be. Just remember that there are little eyeballs watching you. Yeah. And it's not the best thing in the world to put that burden on them. Right. They are not your friend. They are still your child when they're developing. Yeah. And it's your job to model.
Even as adults, there's a line there. I mean, yeah, there really is. You don't want to bring that high emotional conversations in place. Like there's just a line.
There is. And emotional incest can be subtle, and oftentimes it is unintentional.
Absolutely.
It's unintentional. You don't mean to do it. You just, you talk to those you're closest talking to, and this stuff just comes out in conversation. Right. You just have to be incredibly self-aware and know when to stop yourself. Yeah. And just remember that building a healthy community of other adults that are going through it, or even just adults in general. Yeah. That's where you can dump this stuff. Right. Therapists, you can pay them to dump whatever you want on them. Yeah. And if they're awesome.
And like I said earlier, if you have done this, and just take accountability for it, that's so important. Talk about it, apologize for it, and move on.
Yeah. I think, so one last thing I will say, I've seen this happen so many times, is where you've been hurt by somebody and you so badly want to be validated. What you end up doing is alienating the other parent. Like you want them to feel how you feel about your partner in so many ways. Right.
Don't do that.
Like we can have conversations about whether or not they're healthy to be around. That's a different conversation.
Absolutely.
But be careful with that.
And there are like facts, like we've discussed earlier when I was talking to you, like you can speak facts, but not emotionally driven.
Yes. That's a good way to put it. It's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's where the line is.
Okay, we hope this conversation was helpful. I think it is. I think this is something I would have benefited from greatly at a certain time of my life.
Yes, yes.
And you as well.
Agreed.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I hope that y'all benefit from it as well.
Yeah.
It did go longer than I expected, but that's okay.
We're always at roughly an hour now. I think when we
Yeah.
started these, we wanted them to be 15 minutes long.
No, it was 30 minutes, I thought.
We wanted them to be as quick as a commute. But I think we originally intended on doing like 3 a week, but they would just be shorter.
I don't know what we intended. This was all your deal. I'm glad we're doing it now, though. I'm enjoying it.
I would love to do 3 of these a week at this length. But we would need sponsorships and
Yeah, I was
some more
gonna
financial
say.
support to get that done.
Right,
But
right.
that's the overarching goal. I hope we're doing that in the next few years.
Yeah.
That would be epic.
Yep.
With y'all's help, we can probably get there.
Yep.
Okay. All right. That's all we got. Until next time, I am Matt.
I'm Paige.
And we'll see you.
Bye.